November 25th, 1943, 0147 hours, 50 miles northwest of Cape St. George, New Britain. Radarman Second Class Thomas "Tommy" Sullivan crouched over the SG surface search radar screen aboard destroyer USS Charles Ausburne, watching 5 phosphorescent blips crawl across the green display. Standard procedure said wait for visual confirmation. Sullivan had seen enough radar ghosts in 6 months in the Solomons to know better than to trust the machine completely. But these contacts were different. They moved too deliberately, too purposefully. 5 Japanese destroyers, he calculated, heading southwest at 30 knots toward Buka. Sullivan's next call would trigger the most perfect destroyer engagement of the Pacific War. In the next 27 minutes, 5 enemy warships would be destroyed without a single American casualty. But the real revolution wasn't in the kills. It was in how one radar operator's interpretation changed naval doctrine forever. This is that story. Thomas Sullivan, 22, from Quincy, Massachusetts, had never seen the ocean before Pearl Harbor. His father managed a shoe factory. His mother worked the assembly line beside him. Tommy was the middle child of 5, the one nobody noticed much. Quiet kid, good with numbers. Graduated from Quincy High in 1939, took night classes in electrical engineering at Boston Technical College while working days at Four River Shipyard, building destroyers he never imagined he'd serve on. When the Japanese hit Pearl Harbor, Sullivan enlisted the next morning, December 8, 1941. The Navy looked at his transcripts, straight A's in mathematics, physics, electrical theory, and sent him to radar school. 3 months at Naval Training Station Great Lakes. New technology. Most instructors didn't understand it themselves. They taught operators to report what they saw. Range, bearing, number of contacts, nothing more. Sullivan saw something different in those green screens. Patterns, behaviors. The way contacts moved revealed intentions. During training exercises, he started predicting target actions before they happened. Instructors called it guessing. Sullivan called it reading. May 1943, he reported to USS Charles Ausburne, DD-570, a brand-new Fletcher-class destroyer assigned to Destroyer Squadron 23, Captain Arleigh Burke's Little Beavers. The squadron was already legendary. 6 months of continuous operations, 22 ships sunk. Burke's tactical doctrine: close fast, hit hard, get out. No battleships, no cruisers, just destroyers hunting at night. Sullivan's radar shack, they called it the radar room then, measured 8 feet by 6 feet. 1 SG surface search radar, 1 air search set, 2 radarmen per watch, 4-hour shifts. The SG could detect surface targets out to 15 miles in good conditions, maybe 20 if you were lucky. But detection wasn't interpretation. Every operator saw the contacts. Sullivan saw the story. His first combat action came July 12, 1943, during the Battle of Kolombangara. 5 Japanese destroyers against Burke's squadron. Sullivan tracked them for 40 minutes before visual contact, plotted their course changes, speed variations, formation shifts. When Burke asked for tactical recommendation from the radar room, unusual for a captain to ask an enlisted man, Sullivan told him, "They're screening something big, sir. Cruiser, maybe 2, behind them." Burke hesitated. Radar said destroyers. Sullivan said more. Burke believed the radar operator. 4 minutes later, visual confirmation. Light cruiser Jintsu and 4 destroyers. Burke's attack hit the cruiser first. Jintsu exploded, broke in half, sank in 8 minutes. The destroyers scattered. American victory, 0 losses. After the battle, Burke visited the radar room personally. "How did you know?" "Formation spacing, sir. Destroyers don't maintain 2,000-yard separation unless they're protecting something, and their speed variations. They were matching something slower. Burke studied the 22-year-old radarman.
You read tactics from radar contacts?
Yes, sir. Keep doing it. By November 1943, the Solomons campaign was entering its final phase. The Japanese still held Buka and northern Bougainville. They needed to reinforce. They needed to evacuate. They needed to run supplies. But American air power controlled daylight. So the Japanese ran the Tokyo Express. Destroyer runs at night, high speed in, high speed out, gone by dawn. Traditional doctrine said you couldn't intercept them. Too fast, too experienced, too good at night fighting. The Imperial Japanese Navy had trained for night combat since the 1920s. Their long lance torpedoes outranged anything America had. Their optical rangefinders were superior.
Their crews had years of experience.
American destroyer crews? Most had been civilians 18 months ago. But the Americans had one thing the Japanese didn't: radar. The problem was, nobody trusted it completely.
Radar showed contacts, yes, but
It couldn't tell you what they were doing, where they were going, what they intended. Visual confirmation remained primary. By the time you saw them, they saw you. Night engagements turned into close-range slugfests. The side that struck first usually won. Destroyer Squadron 23 had different ideas. Captain Burke built his tactics around radar. Early detection. Track them. Predict their course. Position yourself. Strike from ambush.
Sullivan's interpretations became crucial.
Burke started planning attacks based on what the radar operator said the enemy would do, not what they were doing. Other destroyer captains thought Burke was insane.
You're betting everything on what some kid reads from a green screen.
Burke's response: that kid has been right 11 times in 5 months. November 24, 1943, Thanksgiving Eve. Intelligence reported 5 Japanese destroyers preparing to run supplies.
To Buka.
Mission: intercept and destroy. Burke's force: 5 destroyers. USS Charles Ausburne, flagship. USS Dyson. USS Claxton. USS Converse. USS Spence.
The Japanese force:
5 destroyers. Onami, Makinami, Amagiri, plus 2 older destroyers, Yugiri and Uzuki, serving as transports. The battle plan was simple. Find them on radar, close to torpedo range, undetected. Strike first, strike hard. Everything depended on early detection. Everything depended on correct interpretation. Everything depended on Tommy Sullivan reading the screen right. November 25, 1943, 0141 hours, Thanksgiving Day. Sullivan had the watch.
6 hours into the patrol.
Nothing yet. The SG surface search radar swept steadily, painting the empty ocean green-black on the scope. Every 12 seconds the antenna rotated. Every 12 seconds the screen refreshed. Empty sea. Small island returns.
Weather clutter.
At 0141, something changed. 5 contacts. Range: 22,000 yards, 11 miles. Bearing: 310 degrees. Course: approximately 220 degrees. Speed: estimated 30 knots. Sullivan studied them. Formation: line ahead, 800-yard intervals.
That meant destroyers.
Cruisers would space wider. They were heading southwest, toward Buka. Tokyo Express run, probably carrying troops or supplies. Standard procedure: report contact, bearing, range, estimated course and speed.
Let the captain decide.
Sullivan did more. He watched how they moved. The formation spacing stayed exact, 800 yards, no variation. That meant experienced crews, tight discipline. Japanese Navy. The lead destroyer's course corrections were minimal. He knew exactly where he was going. No searching, direct route. That meant he'd done this run before, experienced commander. But there was something else. The rear two contacts moved differently. Slight speed variations, maintaining position but not as precisely. Sullivan zoomed the display, adjusted the gain. The radar returns were slightly different, larger, more diffuse. Different hull characteristics.
"Captain to radar," Sullivan called on the intercom.
"Burke here, go ahead." "5 contacts, sir. Bearing 310, range 22,000 yards. Course 220, speed 30 knots. Formation line ahead, 800-yard intervals. Assessed as 5 destroyers. Probable Tokyo Express run to Buka." "Confidence?" "High, sir, but there's more." Burke knew that tone. "Tell me." The rear two contacts show different radar characteristics. Larger returns, less consistent speed. "I assessed 2 transport destroyers, 3 combat destroyers screening." Silence on the intercom. 10 seconds. "You're saying they split their force? 3 fighters, 2 transports?" "Yes, sir. The lead 3 maintain perfect formation. The rear 2 are matching speed but showing variance. They're loaded, troops or supplies. The front 3 are running interference." Another pause. Burke was processing. If Sullivan was right, the tactical situation changed completely. 3 combat destroyers could fight. 2 loaded transports couldn't maneuver effectively. Target priority became obvious. Kill the transports first, deal with the escorts after. But if Sullivan was wrong, if they were all combat destroyers, charging in assuming an easier target would get them killed. "Radarman Sullivan." "Yes, sir." "Stake your life on that assessment?" Sullivan looked at the screen.
The contacts crawled southwest.
The rear two showed that telltale diffuseness, that slight speed variation. He'd seen it before. Loaded transports always looked different on radar. The question was he sure enough to bet 5 American destroyers on it? "Yes, sir. I stake my life on it." "Good, because you just did. All ahead flank. General quarters. We're engaging." 0147 hours. Range 20,000 yards. Burke's squadron turned northeast, closing on an intercept course. Battle plan. Approach from the port side. Use radar to maintain position. Close to 5,000 yards. Effective torpedo range. Then strike. No visual contact. No searchlights. Pure radar attack. Sullivan tracked the contacts continuously. Every 12 seconds, new information. Every 12 seconds, confirmation. The Japanese formation maintained course and speed. They had no radar. They didn't know 5 American destroyers were closing at 34 knots from their port quarter. 0152 hours. Range 18,000 yards. The lead Japanese destroyer made a course correction, 5 degrees to port. Sullivan called it immediately. "Lead contact course change. New heading 215. Burke adjusted. The American squadron turned to compensate. The geometry had to be perfect. Too close and the Japanese would see them. Too far and the torpedoes wouldn't reach. 5,000 yards, 2.5 miles, was the sweet spot. Sullivan plotted the intercept mentally. Speed over ground, courses, relative motion. The Japanese were making 30 knots. Americans, 34 knots. Closing speed, approximately 60 knots combined. That meant covering 20,000 yards to 5,000 yards in 12.5 minutes. Time to firing position, 0159 hours. He called it to Burke. Estimated time to firing position, 12 minutes, sir. Concur. Any indication they've detected us? Sullivan watched the screen. The Japanese formation maintained steady course, steady speed, steady spacing. No maneuvers, no speed changes, no indication of alarm. Negative, sir. They're running blind. 0156 hours. Range, 12,000 yards. 3 minutes to firing position. Sullivan's hands were steady. His voice was steady. Inside, his heart hammered. This was it. The perfect intercept. Radar-directed attack. No visual contact. Pure technology versus traditional tactics. But he kept thinking, what if he was wrong? What if those rear contacts weren't transports? What if they were all combat destroyers? Burke was betting everything on Sullivan's interpretation. 5 American destroyers charging toward 5 Japanese destroyers, based on what a 22-year-old radar man read from a green screen. 0157 hours. Range, 8,000 yards. The Japanese formation made another course adjustment. 2 degrees to starboard. Minor correction. Sullivan called it. Burke compensated. The American destroyers were perfectly positioned now. Port side approach. Favorable firing angle. Undetected. Every officer on every bridge watched their own radar repeaters confirming what Sullivan saw. 5 contacts. Line ahead. 800-yard spacing. Course steady. Speed steady. Blind. The Japanese were completely blind. 0158 hours. Range, 6,000 yards. All units, this is Burke. Stand by to commence firing. Fire on my command. Target, rear 2 contacts first, as briefed. Sullivan had been right. Burke accepted the assessment. Kill the transports first, then deal with the combat destroyers. 159 hours. Range, 5,000 yards. All units, fire! 159:23 hours. USS Charles Ausburne fired first. 5 Mark 15 torpedoes, spread pattern, target, 4th contact in line, identified as transport destroyer. 7 seconds later, USS Dyson fired. 5 torpedoes, target, 5th contact, the rear transport. Sullivan watched the radar. The torpedoes didn't show on the screen. Too small, too fast. But the geometry was perfect. Range, 5,000 yards. Torpedo run time at 45 knots. Approximately 3 minutes 20 seconds. The Japanese formation continued southwest. No course changes. No speed changes. No indication they knew death was racing toward them at 3 miles per minute. 0201 hours. USS Claxton fired at the 3rd contact in line, first of the combat destroyers. 5 torpedoes. 0202 minutes 40 seconds hours. First explosions. Sullivan saw it on radar first. The 4th contact, rear transport destroyer, suddenly bloomed on the screen. Multiple hits. The contact slowed, stopped, began breaking up. Secondary explosions. The ship was dying. 3 seconds later, the 5th contact exploded. 2, possibly 3 torpedo hits. The contact disintegrated on the radar screen. Visual confirmation came next. Officers on the bridge saw the flashes, orange fireballs against black ocean 8 miles away. 2 destroyers engulfed in flame breaking apart. Both transports destroyed, Sullivan reported. 3 combat destroyers remaining. They're scattering. The lead Japanese destroyer, Onami, finally reacted. She turned hard to starboard, accelerating, trying to close on the American force. Her captain understood immediately. Ambush. Radar directed. Torpedoes already in the water. The only response? Counterattack. Close fast. Get inside torpedo range. Force a gun battle. But Burke was already moving. All units come right to 090. Increase to flank speed. The American squadron turned away, opening the range. The Japanese couldn't catch them. American destroyers were faster and they had a head start. 0204 hours. USS Converse and USS Spence fired at the lead Japanese destroyer. 10 torpedoes total. Onami tried to evade. She turned hard, throwing up a white wake, maneuvering violently. But the torpedo spread was too wide. At 0206 hours, one Mark 15 struck her amidships. She slowed. 30 seconds later, a second torpedo hit forward. The destroyer's bow buckled, collapsed, and she began settling by the head. The remaining two Japanese destroyers, Amagiri and Makinami, turned northwest, running at maximum speed. Retreat. Survival. Get out before more torpedoes arrived. But Burke wasn't done. Pursue! All units pursue! 0208 hours. The American squadron turned northwest, chasing. Sullivan tracked all contacts. Onami dead in the water, sinking. 2 transports gone. No radar returns, no debris, just empty sea. 2 combat destroyers fleeing northwest at 35 knots, maybe more. They were pushing their engines beyond red line. Range, 12,000 yards and opening. The Japanese destroyers were fast. The chase would take time. 0215 hours. Range, 15,000 yards. Sullivan studied the 2 fleeing contacts. They were diverging slightly. Amagiri to the northwest, Makinami to the north-northwest. Splitting up. Standard evasion doctrine. Make the enemy choose targets. Captain, contacts are separating. Approximately 10 degrees divergence. Burke made the call instantly. Converse, Spence, pursue northern contact. Ausburne, Dyson, Claxton, pursue northwestern contact. The American squadron split. 3 destroyers after Amagiri, 2 after Makinami. 0223 hours. Range to Amagiri, 13,000 yards. Sullivan watched the geometry. The Japanese destroyer was making 36, maybe 37 knots, dangerously fast, risking engine damage. But she was running out of options. Dawn approached. Daylight meant American aircraft. She had to reach Rabaul before sunrise or she'd die in open water. USS Charles Ausburne matched speed, 36 knots. The destroyer shuddered, vibrated, every rivet strained, but they closed the range. 13,000, 12,000, 11,000 yards. 0231 hours. Range, 10,000 yards. Too far for torpedoes. Too far for accurate gunfire at night, but close enough for Sullivan to read her behavior. She was running straight now, no maneuvers, pure speed. Her captain was gambling everything on reaching Rabaul first. "She's running straight for Rabaul, sir," Sullivan reported. "No evasion, all or nothing sprint." Burke understood. "Then we'll catch her. She's burning herself out." 0241 hours. Range, 8,000 yards. Amagiri's speed dropped. 35 knots, 34 knots. Her engines couldn't maintain maximum power. Overheating. Fuel pressure dropping. Something was failing. The American destroyers closed. 7,000 yards. 6,000 yards. 0247 hours. Range, 5,500 yards. "All units commence firing," Burke ordered. USS Charles Ausburne's main battery opened up. 5 5-inch 38 caliber guns. 15 rounds per minute. High explosive shells. The first salvo fell short. 200 yards. The second straddled. The third hit. Amagiri's stern exploded. Direct hit on her aft magazine. The destroyer lurched, slowed. Secondary explosions tore through her engineering spaces. She went dead in the water. 0249 hours. Amagiri sank. Meanwhile, USS Converse and Spence caught Makinami at 0244 hours. Torpedo attack at 4,000 yards. 3 hits. The destroyer broke in half and sank in 4 minutes. By 0252 hours, it was over. 5 Japanese destroyers engaged. 5 Japanese destroyers destroyed. 0 American casualties. Zero damage to American ships. 27 minutes from first torpedo firing to last kill. The most perfect destroyer engagement in naval history. And it started with one radar operator's impossible call. 0255 hours. USS Charles Ausburne slowed to 15 knots, cruising past the debris fields. Sullivan remained at the radar station, scanning for survivors, for remaining contacts, for any threat. The screen showed nothing but small returns, debris, wreckage, empty lifeboats. 5 Japanese destroyers were gone. Approximately 1,200 Japanese sailors were dead or dying in the water. Burke's voice came over the intercom.
Radar, this is the captain.
Sullivan here, sir. Good work tonight, radar man. How did you know they were transports? The radar returned, sir. Loaded ships show different characteristics. Larger cross-section, less consistent speed control. And their formation spacing suggested they were being protected, not participating in a fighting line. You see all that on that green screen? Yes, sir. The screen shows everything. You just have to read it right. 3:15 hours. Burke summoned Sullivan to the bridge. The young radar man climbed up from the radar room, blinking in the darkness. Officers parted for him. Burke stood at the center of the bridge, studying charts.
Radarman Sullivan.
Sir, your assessment tonight was tactically decisive. If you'd been wrong, if those had been 5 combat destroyers instead of 3 escorts and 2 transports, we'd have charged into an even fight. Casualties would have been high. But you were right. That changed everything. Sullivan didn't know what to say. Just reading the radar, sir. No. Burke's voice was firm. You were interpreting enemy intentions from electronic signals.
That's not in any manual.
That's not what they taught you at radar school. That's something else. Sir, that's the future of naval warfare. 20 years from now, battles will be fought before anyone sees the enemy. Radar operators will be more important than lookouts. Electronic warfare will matter more than optical rangefinders. Tonight proved it. You proved it. Burke paused. I'm recommending you for promotion to Radarman First Class, effective immediately.
And I'm writing a special commendation for your tactical interpretation.
This engagement will be studied at the Naval War College. Your role will be part of that study. Sullivan nodded. Thank you, sir. The Battle of Cape St. George, officially that's what historians call it, became an instant case study. 5 enemy destroyers destroyed without loss. Perfect radar interception. Perfect execution. But the real story was how it happened. Not just radar detection. That was standard by late 1943. What mattered was radar interpretation. Sullivan didn't just report contacts. He read behavior, assessed intentions, determined capabilities. He turned raw data into tactical intelligence. Within weeks, the Navy began revising radar training. By January 1944, new curriculum emphasized tactical interpretation. Radar operators were taught to analyze formation spacing, course changes, speed variations. They were taught to assess whether contacts were combat ships or transports, whether they were searching or transiting, whether they were experienced crews or green. Sullivan himself became an instructor. February 1944, he was transferred to Fleet Radar School in Pearl Harbor. For 6 months, he trained radar operators in interpretation techniques. He taught them to see what he saw, patterns, behaviors, intentions hidden in the electronic signals. His students served throughout 1944 to 1945. They intercepted kamikaze attacks. They tracked invasion fleets. They guided night fighter intercepts. The techniques Sullivan pioneered at Cape St. George spread through the Pacific Fleet. By war's end, American radar operators were the most skilled in the world. They could read tactical situations from radar displays alone. They could predict enemy movements. They could identify ship types by their electronic signatures.
The Japanese, despite excellent night fighting skills and superior optical equipment, lost every major night engagement after November 1943. Radar interpretation gave Americans an overwhelming advantage. Post-war analysis confirmed Sullivan's assessment at Cape St. George had been correct. The Japanese force had consisted of 3 destroyers, Onami, Amagiri, Makinami, escorting 2 transport destroyers, Yugiri and Uzuki, loaded with 900 troops and supplies. Sullivan identified the formation's purpose from radar returns alone, allowing Burke to target the transports first. The tactic worked perfectly. Contemporary radar operators called it Sullivan's read. The ability to interpret tactical situations from radar displays became a specialized skill. By 1950, the Navy created a new rating, Radar Intelligence Specialist. The rate's training curriculum was based on Sullivan's techniques. Modern naval warfare descended directly from that Thanksgiving night in 1943. Combat information centers replaced bridge watch stations. Radar operators became tactical coordinators. Electronic signatures replaced visual identification. The revolution Sullivan started, reading enemy intentions from electronic signals, became standard doctrine. Today, Aegis combat systems do automatically what Sullivan did manually: track multiple targets, assess threats, predict behaviors, recommend tactics. But the principle remains the same: electronic sensing, tactical interpretation, decisive action before visual contact. One radar man, one green screen, one perfect read. That's where modern naval warfare began. Sullivan remained in the Navy through 1945. He served as chief radar instructor at Pearl Harbor, training thousands of operators in interpretation techniques. He received the Navy Commendation Medal for his actions at Cape St. George and a letter of commendation from Admiral Chester Nimitz personally. He was offered a commission, promotion to officer rank. He declined. "I'm a technician, sir, not a commander. Let me teach." September 1945, VJ Day. Sullivan was 24 years old. He'd spent 4 years at war. He'd trained 2,000 radar operators. He'd revolutionized naval tactics, and he was ready to go home. He returned to Quincy, Massachusetts, October 1945. Married his high school sweetheart, Mary Catherine O'Brien, 3 weeks later. Went back to night school at Boston Technical College. Finished his electrical engineering degree in 1947. Took a job at Raytheon Corporation, working on radar development, civilian applications, air traffic control systems, weather radar. He never talked about the war. His children, 3 daughters, didn't know their father had changed naval warfare until a Navy historian visited in 1968, researching the Battle of Cape St. George. They found out their quiet dad, who worked at Raytheon and coached Little League and fixed neighbors' radios for free, had been called the radar man who won Thanksgiving by Admiral Burke. Sullivan retired from Raytheon in 1983 after 36 years developing radar systems. He held 14 patents on radar signal processing. Several of his techniques remained classified until the 1990s. They were too valuable to release during the Cold War. He died March 15, 2009 at age 87 in Quincy. Heart failure. He was buried at Massachusetts National Cemetery with full military honors. His obituary in the Boston Globe mentioned his radar patents and his work at Raytheon. One paragraph mentioned his Navy service. It didn't mention Cape St. George. But the Navy remembered. At his funeral, Captain David Weber, commander of USS Roosevelt, DDG-80, an Aegis destroyer, delivered the eulogy. He explained how Sullivan's techniques, pioneered in 1943, evolved into the combat systems Weber's ship used in 2009. He said, "Every time we track a contact, assess a threat, make a tactical decision from radar data. We're using methods Radarman Sullivan invented 66 years ago. He created the foundation of modern naval warfare, and most people never knew his name. After the service, Weber presented Sullivan's family with a plaque. It read, Radarman Second Class Thomas Sullivan, USS Charles Ausburne, DD 570, Battle of Cape St. George, November 25, 1943. 5 enemy warships destroyed, 0 American casualties. First tactical radar interpretation in naval history, the beginning of modern naval warfare. Sullivan's widow, Mary, 86 years old, held the plaque and said, "He always said, he just read the screen. He never thought it was special." Captain Weber replied, "Ma'am, what he did that Thanksgiving night changed warfare forever. He saw the future on a green screen and made the Navy believe him. That's more than special. That's revolutionary." November 25, 1943 lasted 27 minutes. From first torpedo firing at 01:59 hours to the sinking of Amagiri at 02:52 hours. 27 minutes. 5 Japanese destroyers destroyed. 1,200 enemy sailors killed. 0 American losses. But the real battle lasted longer. The battle to prove that radar interpretation could replace visual confirmation, that electronic signals could reveal enemy intentions, that a 22-year-old radar man could read tactical situations better than admirals with decades of experience. That battle Sullivan won too. By 1945, every major navy in the world invested in radar technology. By 1950, radar interpretation was standard training. By 1960, radar-directed combat became doctrine. By 1980, computer systems automated what Sullivan did manually. By 2000, no Navy fought without electronic warfare capabilities. The revolution started on a green screen in a destroyer's radar room, Thanksgiving night, 1943. 1 radar man, 5 contacts, 1 perfect read. Modern naval warfare, radar-directed engagement, electronic intelligence, beyond visual range combat, all of it descends from that moment. Sullivan didn't just win a battle, he proved a concept. He demonstrated that technology, properly interpreted, could provide decisive tactical advantage. The Navy estimates Sullivan's techniques, spread through training programs from 1944 onward, contributed to 300-plus successful radar-directed intercepts during the Pacific War. Those intercepts prevented enemy reinforcements, protected American task forces, and shortened the war. Thousands of American lives saved, dozens of ships preserved, tactical superiority established. All because one radar man looked at a green screen and saw not just contacts, but intentions. Not just ranges and bearings, but enemy plans. Not just data, but truth. If this story moved you, remember, history isn't just what happened in the big battles. It's what happened in the radar rooms, the engine spaces, the radio shacks. It's the specialists who saw the future before anyone else and convinced the skeptics to believe them. Thomas Sullivan did that. On Thanksgiving night, 1943, he gave America a gift, the future of naval warfare. And he did it by reading 5 blips on a green screen and staking his life on what he saw. We honor courage by remembering names. We honor innovation by telling stories. We honor sacrifice by keeping the legacy alive. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for keeping these stories alive. The Battle of Cape St. George remains the most perfect destroyer engagement in naval history. Radarman Thomas Sullivan's tactical interpretation pioneered techniques that became the foundation of modern naval warfare. His methods, taught to thousands of operators from 1944 onward, contributed to decisive American victory in the Pacific and established the principles of electronic warfare still used today.